Good evening. It's Brian back with the Tuesday night live stream. Um, Twitch says this title's invalid. Try changing in a bit. Oh, I got to change my title. Sorry guys, I had to do some little editing to my title here because Twitch doesn't like it. So anyway, welcome back to the Tuesday night live stream. Tonight we're going to chop it up about the situation that we're dealing with from a domestic kind of political stand front in our segment, How Effed Are We? We're going to talk a bit about Absolute Batman. I hinted at it last week. I do want to talk about the Arkham special. I'm really enjoying the groundwork that they're laying there. And I just want to nerd out a little bit about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I'm keeping it light this week because we have a lot of heavy topics. And so I'm going to kind of jump around on my outline. The first thing I'm going to talk about tonight is what we're seeing in the Absolute Batman universe and kind of the groundwork they're laying. Last time we checked in, we actually had a backstory on the Joker as a character, and spoiler alert for those that don't know, but we had some reveals about who Alfred Pennyworth in the Absolute universe considers to be the Joker. And Absolute Alfred is basically a government agent. And so his role in Absolute Batman is he's still Bruce's mentor, but he's more hands-on. He's out in the field and he's bringing assessments from, actively fighting the bad guys. And well, maybe he is one of the bad guys, but going out there and taking on the bad guys and killing folk and things along those lines. And so and Alfred first meets Bruce in this Absolute universe. Hey, how's it going? When Alfred first meets Bruce in this universe, how are you doing this evening? It's kind of contentious. And so initially Alfred, they kind of reveal it that more or less his handler sent him to keep track of what's going on with Batman, keep an eye on the Batman. What's going on, y'all? How's it going? What's up? Welcome to the live stream. And so initially they really set it up as Alfred Pennyworth. They kind of frame him a little bit and tease him as this minor antagonist to Bruce, and they quickly kind of revert and they end up developing this mentor and mentee kind of relationship. What up? What's up, y'all? What's going on? So, and I really like the dynamic they set up, and I'm not going to get too far into it because I've talked about this at length, but I like the framework they set up and the narrative story that they set up between the relationship with Alfred and Bruce. They've even included Barbara, not Barbara. No. They included Alfred's daughter. I forgot what her name was in the story, but they have a contentious relationship. So he does have loved ones, and that actually adds stakes to his story moving forward. I can see them, specifically the way that they have Joker set up, where he is really this all-encompassing, enigmatic force that nobody can really touch in Gotham City. He's showing that Alfred can be touched. And so I think that if they go that route where Absolute Joker wants to address Alfred's involvement with this Batman situation in the Absolute universe, he's absolutely going to go after Alfred's daughter. Like that, the writing is on the wall. And the way that they've kind of set this Joker up as this all-present force, essentially Joker is Bruce Wayne. And I know we've seen lots of evil Batman stories. We've seen lots of evil Batman stories, but this is kind of a different way that they're framing it. And that's what makes it a little bit more interesting because they've turned it on us here. Batman grew up middle class. He didn't have all these trappings of wealth. He's not just some rich kid working out his daddy issues by beating up on criminally deranged people. He's actually fighting literal lunatics and murderers and stuff. And the concept is in the absolute universe, um, the people that would normally be the chaos agents, like your Joker, Lex Luthor, Ra's al Ghul, all them, the people that would be introducing chaos into the universe are actually the order of the universe. So the villains are the order. No absolute Superman. They in the absolute Justice League or whatever, where the Justice League is essentially made up of all the baddies, all the bad guys in all the big time players that are the villains in the absolute universe. They teased Lex Luthor and made it seem like Lex Luthor is that dude. Um, they showed him as unassuming, but typically in the absolute universe, when somebody is shown as this unassuming individual, that means that they are a demon from absolute hell. And so I'm interested to see what they do with absolute Lex Luthor now that he's kind of it looks like they're kind of pushing him to be the foil in absolute Superman. Um, Same thing with Joker. Absolute Joker looks to be unassuming until you get to like issue number 15, and Alfred is sitting there essentially telling ghost stories, campfire ghost stories about um, the mythology of the Joker. And Batman's kind of pressing him and saying, I don't care what you think or what you can prove. Tell me what you believe, Pennyworth. And essentially, Alfred came out and said, this guy is a nightmare thing from hell. And I don't know where he came from. I don't know what his motivations are, but he's not of this earth. And that's kind of how they framed it. Well, the Arkham book, um, and I don't know if it's a special or whatnot. Let me pull it up here. But Absolute Batman Arkham, this is establishing the mythology of Arkham Asylum. And there's two ways to say it, because there's the traditional Arkham, and then there's Ark M. They're both the same place. One is the traditional Arkham grounds and named after the guy who founded it, and then it ends up coming into possession of the Joker, and he uses that as his research facility to basically genetically manufacture Batman's rogue gallery. And so it's really kind of an interesting take on it. And it actually it's interesting because I mentioned last time, with Absolute Batman number 15, Alfred is kind of an unreliable narrator, and that's not intentionally. He's unreliable in the sense that he is basically cobbling together his understanding of the Joker, which is almost framed to be beyond understanding, beyond his comprehension. He's trying his best to express to Bruce what exactly he's up against, and it makes him an unreliable narrator, which I think is dope. But now we get a little bit more insight into who Joker is and the mythology behind Arkham Asylum. And it's really, really super interesting. Um, really, the way that they developed it, the way they fleshed it out, is I'm a big fan of it. And um, long story short, the way that they set up Arkham in this book is Arkham is essentially uh it it's not and I think the way that they've kind of narratively framed it in the traditional Batman books is Arkham contains the rot, and it's kind of it is kind of a an extension of the rot of Gotham City, right? um in this Absolute Batman, they almost frame it like Arkham is kind of this tumor, like the grounds are haunted. It's like the grounds are haunted. And it goes all the way back to the early days of when they used to have sanatoriums for people that have mental illness. And he just, and the story of the founder, and I forgot, is Dr. Arkham. I forgot what his name was, but even the story that how he came to want to care for people that were violent um, criminals. I mean, criminally insane people, essentially, um, was even tragic and jarring and gothic terror and really disturbing. They got into the disturbing shit right off the rip in this book. Like, I'm not even going to front. Within the first 3 pages, I'm like, Jesus Christ. So Arkham, the doctor who started Arkham Asylum, essentially what happened was, and I'm paraphrasing off the top of the dome while I pull up the comic book. But essentially, his dad was killed in the Civil War, and it was a useless battle because the war had essentially already been over, but it hadn't reached the lines yet, and so his dad essentially died for no reason whatsoever, because the battle they were fighting was in a war that was already declared over. And his mom, when she received the news from the soldier that was bringing it to her, she took the soldier's gun and shot the soldier, killed the kid, killed Arkham's siblings in front of him, and then killed herself. Um, yeah, it's really fucked up. Um, and so he ended up in the orphanage kind of system that, back in the 1800s, that was kind of how it rolled, was the orphanage system. And he grew up through the orphanage, and he ended up becoming, a high functioning regular person. And he wanted to start an institution to care for people that had different mental illnesses and whatnot. And a lot of it's best intentions. Like, I know in other Batman books, the way that they've always kind of framed it is, the way that they always framed it was, they're kind of presented as, the Arkhams are presented as this sinister family. This guy actually had the best intentions. But we know what happens with best intentions, right? We know what happens with best intentions. And so the story starts out with him showing Arkham to somebody who's interested in buying it. And off the rip, if you're paying attention to the books, it's Joker. Like, that this is Joker that is attempting to buy this facility. And so he's walking through the halls and kind of telling the stories. The guy asks if he has a son, if the guy has any family, and Arkham doesn't really have family. But he did have a young man that he did come to take care of. He said the young man showed up on his doorstep covered in blood, and he wanted to take care of him. And like I said, this is set in 1945. So this story is kind of set in 1945. And so, but he had the young man that showed up on his doorstep covered in blood. And he kind of took this young man in and took him in, essentially adopted him. And this kid would accompany him to the asylum. And he felt like he really had a passion for helping people out. And so the kid would take notes and things along those lines. Well, one day they get in this killer, and this guy was like a super, super, super deeply violent person. And he killed nurses. He killed, he killed orderlies and everything. And he required eventually the highest level of security that Arkham had to provide. And so, eventually what happens is, and I'm not going to go through the whole story, eventually the kid that he took in ended up getting captured by this super violent guy. And the reason why the guy didn't kill the kid is because he knew that if he killed this kid, if he killed Arkham's protege, this kid that he took in, he would instantly be gunned down, and he didn't want to die. Okay. And so he turned loose of the kid. Right. And his name is Jack. And so they call him Jack Doe for the purpose of the journal, because he doesn't have a name. And they're kind of hinting that he is Jack the Ripper. That's who the doctor thinks that this guy eventually turned into. And anyway, long story short, he gets a hold of the kid. He releases the kid. And then I believe a couple nights later, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm trying to remember this off the top of my head because I read it about a week ago. So anyway, he escapes, and instantly the doctor knows immediately. Dr. Arkham knows immediately where Jack went. And Jack, he rushes home and finds that his door had been broken down or whatnot, and the child is gone. And so basically, Dr. Arkham sees, thinks that Jack killed this kid, and that ends up becoming his cross to bear for the rest of his life. And so, yeah. And so he carries this, and this whole time he's talking to the guy that wants to buy Arkham Asylum and purchase the land from him. And he's kind of telling this whole story. And He talks about this, and I'll show you the panel because I'm not trying to get demonetized. I'm not trying to get not demonetized. I'm not trying to get my video flagged, but I'll show you the panel, a couple of panels here. So this is Jack escaping. He's holding the kid at knife point. Blah 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 blah. Jumping around here. And so this is him having the conversation in 1945 with the guy that wants to buy Arkham Asylum. We know it's the Joker. We know that it's Jack Grimm, but the doctor doesn't know it yet. And so basically Jack Grimm starts digging and says, okay, tell me about the breakout. And eventually they covered up the breakout of what happened when all the inmates escaped from Arkham and went into Gotham City and went on this massive killing spree. It's 1886. And when the breakout happened, he knew that Jack went to his house and got that kid in his mind. And they essentially found where they had dug out this place to escape. And so that ends up becoming like his cross to bear for the rest of his life, right? And so the kid's gone. His son, in his mind, he's like, I never forget myself for the breakout. And what happens as a result to cope, I converted an old storeroom and created this. And basically, this is a monument to record what he believes to be his failures, right? And so, long story short, I'm not going to spoil the whole book for you, but long story short, he's talking to Jack Grimm, who is the Joker. And the Joker asked to go see the place where everybody broke out. And so he takes him down there, takes him down to the basement and shows where everybody broke out. But Jack is like, wait, there's a whole nother room over here. Right. And essentially, he wants to see the furnace room. The doctor hadn't been down there in 60 years because that's where he found the inmates had broken out. Okay. And he had forgotten about this wall that he had re-bricked. And Jack kind of points it out. But in the interim, Jack whispers something, the Joker, I'm going to keep saying Jack Grimm, the Joker, whispers something into the doctor's ear. And what he whispered into the doctor's ear, come to find out, was something that only the kid would know. And so basically we're saying that Jack Grimm, the Joker, was the kid that he took in. Okay. And this entire time he's thinking that this kid was dead, and gone and everything. And so it nags at the doctor, keeps him up at night. And so he ends up going down there using a mallet, using a hammer, and breaking, taking that wall down. And what he finds in that wall is the corpse of the crazy guy that he thought had escaped and killed that kid. So basically, he found out that the kid that he thought had been dead had been taunting him this entire time and let him live his entire life with this rampaging grief of failure, where the kid basically orchestrated this entire thing. It was was the mastermind behind the breakout, just to screw with him, like just for the love of the game, just to screw with the doctor and absolutely, absolutely just fuck with his mind. And basically the doctor ends up, as a result, he burns Arkham down and Jack Grimm buys the land, and that ends up becoming the facility of Arkham. Now, when the doctor burns this down, he basically kills everybody that's in there. And basically he is sending this book that's supposed to be his confession to the Gotham Police Department, but it gets intercepted by the Joker. So it never reaches the Gotham City Police Department because he wants them to stop the Joker and stop him from harming more people. And so that's what the story is. It really built out the mythology of that absolute universe version of Batman. And I'm really, really enjoying it because they're making the world building really, really, really robust. I think they're going to continue on. I've read, I saw the latest issue of DCKO, and I know that, we're going to see some crossover between the absolute universe, absolute Superman, absolute Wonder Woman, and whatever, and Batman. I don't necessarily think these are the real versions of them, but it is what it is. You know how comic books are. I really don't want the Absolute Universe to go away. I think this is the most refreshing version of the DC universe and most refreshing Elseworld that DC's done in decades. I mean, decades. And I've read lots of books, lots of Elseworld stories. This is the best Elseworld story that they have. All of the Absolute characters are super, super intriguing. Absolute Green Lantern, Absolute Martian Manhunter, Absolute Wonder Woman is intriguing. Absolute Superman is absolutely flooring me and surprising me with the wrinkles that they add to this character, because Superman is almost essentially a radical. He's an activist, essentially. And they're showing how he is more aligned. You know, he doesn't necessarily care about upholding police or military jurisdiction. He's about working with people and protecting the people. And so, Absolute Superman book kind of explores, you know, his first, you know, now that he's kind of out of his arc with Ra's al Ghul, um, you know, it's kind of showing him trying to adjust to being a hero on Earth and how he's basically overworking himself. But it's really, really super interesting of how aligned he is with people in struggle. I'm interested to see what they would do with this. I would actually love to see them introduce, you know, I know that they done the absolute Ra's al Ghul and they kind of made him essentially Vandal Savage. Like, I mean, more or less, absolute Ra's al Ghul is Vandal Savage, more or less. But I want to see an absolute version of Vandal Savage and make him the power behind the throne of the Lazarus Corporation. That would be really, really dope. Because there is a connection in the regular DC universe. There's a connection between the Lazarus pits and the meteorite that gave Vandal Savage powers. I would love to see them merge the two things and see an absolute version of Vandal Savage. I'm doing, I'm kind of spoiling it coming up. I'm going to be doing the character issues on Vandal Savage because he's one of my favorite villains. And I think he is so disrespected in DC. You know, I know right now he is chief of the Gotham City police force, or the commissioner or something like that in the mainline DC comic books. But I feel like Vandal Savage is heavily slept on as a villain. And we've seen more Ra's al Ghul than anything else. And Vandal Savage to me is Ra's al Ghul on steroids. He's like he's that guy, and I feel like he doesn't get enough respect in the book. So I'm going to be doing a character issues of him. And it's going to follow on the lines of what I did with character issues with Mojo, where kind of a reimagining of how I think that they should use the character, or how I would like to see them use the character in books. And so be on the lookout for that. That's probably going to be something I do next week. I got to put it on my calendar because I keep pushing it off. I got to sit down and do the research to make sure I'm factually accurate. But that being said, the world building in Absolute Batman is incredible. We've established that Batman grew up poor. He is an absolute unit. This dude is like 6'8", 450 pounds. He really, like, he got his no killing rule after he was standing waist deep in a bunch of body parts of like neo-Nazis, which was awesome. Like after that, then he's like, yeah, I don't think I'm with this killing thing. After he just slaughtered a bunch of neo-Nazis. Excellent work, bro. I love it. But yeah, I like the world building that we're doing with Absolute Batman. And we're still getting thematic elements that translate from the mainline Batman. They're just reinterpreted in a different way. Like I said, I've joked around. This Batman and Absolute Batman will not kill you anymore. He used to, but he will absolutely make you wish you were dead. He will maim you. He will dismember you. He will blind you. He will spray acid in your face. He'll do everything else just shy of actually doing the deed and killing you. And I'm here for it. And like I said, even at the annual, the Absolute Batman annual where he got his no killing rule, it was after he's standing knee deep in the charred remains of a bunch of neo-Nazis. 2-page spread of him snapping a neo-Nazi's arm at the elbow. Incredible work. Beautiful. Brought a tear to my eye. So I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the world building. I'm enjoying how they're presenting Arkham as this kind of source of rot in Gotham that needs to be excised. He doesn't really escape Arkham's legacy. Absolute Joker is Arkham's legacy. He is integral to what Arkham represents, and it's not just Arkham as you know. It's not just Arkham as this institution that the Joker escapes from. It's an institution that he actually built, and he built the horror around it. He orchestrated so much with it, and it is really establishing that Joker is older than what we know. You know, he's at least hundreds of years old. And that's kind of what they're establishing in this world, that there aren't multiple generations of the Grimm family. There's only one. And he has been the man pulling the strings and orchestrating everything. And they basically took Joker and made him the Court of Owls, you know, as one person, if we're really talking about it. So, and I got to get the dude's name. I can't remember what his name was. Amadeus Arkham. That's who it is. So it's Amadeus Arkham, who is the founder of Arkham Asylum in the Absolute Universe. And like I said, it's presented as this source of corruption and rot in Gotham. Not a byproduct of it, but the manifestation of it. And spoiler alert, at the end of the book, they introduce Clayface, Poison Ivy, Deathstroke, and the Mad Hatter, I think. And I think I'm missing one person. So these are going to be your next series of rogues that Batman's going to have to deal with. All of them are horrific. All of them are nightmare fuel. And Absolute Scarecrow too. And I'm trying to see how demented Absolute Scarecrow is going to be, because if the way that they been presenting these villains continues, Absolute Scarecrow is going to be something that's going to keep you up at night. So I'm interested to see what they do with that. All right. I've talked all around my outline. But like I said, if you're into horror, like horror comic books, like the old EC kind of horror comic books, these Batman books really will scratch that itch for you. It really will absolutely scratch that itch for you, because these are straight up horror books. And Scott Snyder's really in his bag when he's writing horror stories. So it is what it is. All right. Next segment. How fucked are we? All right. This has been a couple weeks in the making. And I had to chill because last week there was so much overwhelming news regarding what we're doing in Venezuela. Me going back and forth with people that are external to the country, explaining to them what imperialism looks like when you are living in the country that is doing the imperialism, and they're doing the imperialism to you. I saw somebody comment, basically talking about how all this oil that we're essentially stealing from Venezuela is going to absolutely be refined in oil refineries located in Black neighborhoods. That's the benefit that Black people get from imperialism. We get to have the cancer causing refinement happen right down the street from the kids' school. So, but I had those arguments online with people, kind of explaining to them, especially people that are external to the United States. And sometimes it's people internal, because one weird thing that white leftists do, and this is a tangent, but one weird thing that white leftists kind of do is they still aggressively center themselves in the struggle of marginalized people. And what I mean by that is they fight aggressively. They will fight harder for groups that they perceive to be marginalized, but then they will take that fight to other marginalized people. Like, we're the ones that are the problems. Does that make sense? And a lot of it has to do with, and a couple of people have put this over, but it's something that it had to be my boy Matthew. I think it was my boy Matthew in college kind of broke down to me. He was kind of talking about, the super activist leftist white dude kind of paradigm. And he's like, a lot of it, and like I said, I've heard other people mention it too, but he's the first person I ever heard say this. He's saying essentially these white dudes that are on our side, these white leftists, a lot of times that are on our side, what they're doing is they're fighting for the privileges that they no longer feel like they have access to. And he's like, and that's always going to put them a little bit out of alignment with marginalized people, because unless they are holistically fighting for all the people, what happens is they're fighting for the privileges that their grandparents had in that society. And they feel like that was taken away from them. And that's what's radicalized them. And so they don't get to have the same buying power and the same social status as their grandparents. And so that's what their modus operandi is. And so it's not narrowly focused on oppressed people. Oppressed people are just the vehicle. Like, we're the vehicle that they're going to use to their harmonious world. But once they get to their harmonious world, then they don't need us anymore. Then what happens at that point? Matthew is the first one I've seen put that over to me. And so that's something that always kind of stuck with me. And I've heard people mention it recently, but this was like, I heard this like 20 some odd years ago. And so that's kind of the where white, I'm starting to see the specifically on the leftist sides, but some of the liberals too, some white liberals will do this too. I specifically see, where they will bang harder on, they'll bang harder than anybody on a specific issue. They will be more virulent in their attack or critique of people. The loudest ones in the room, but then when some black person says, hey, there's some nuance to this, they will turn on that black person, say, they'll start barking on that black person. Like, we don't have a unique experience in terms of what the nuances presented. And so that's what I'm seeing in white leftist spaces and white liberal spaces a lot. So that was what I was dealing with last week, specifically talking about American imperialism, specifically, because, I was trying to explain to other people that everything this country has ever done to other countries. And initially I said Nagasaki and Hiroshima, but they've bombed black neighborhoods before domestically. They were dropping fire bombs when they burnt down Tulsa. The move bombing, they essentially dropped a bomb on a black neighborhood in Philadelphia in the 80s. And so we've been bombed too. Everything that they've done to other communities, other countries, has been done or practiced or perfected on black and indigenous people. Every form of chemical warfare, viral warfare. In St. Louis, they were testing, during the Cold War, they were testing different types of aerosols. So if they ever had to use chemical weapons in urban environments in Soviet Union, the government even admitted to doing this. They say that the stuff that they were spraying into the air was harmless, but people in St. Louis, in black neighborhoods in St. Louis, were talking about, they're seeing correlations, spikes in cancer rates, and they didn't know where it was coming from. Come to find out, what's happening was in the 60s, the government actually did test aerosol distribution of chemical weapons over parts of St. Louis, because they wanted to see what it would look like if they ever had to do that back in the days. It would have been a Soviet urban theater. And so they said that St. Louis matched that Soviet urban core. And so they wanted to see how these chemical weapons traveled. It was like research in the aerosol technology. And so a lot of black folks were saying, yeah, we were outside and we saw these orange clouds. The planes flew over and dropped these orange clouds of stuff on us. And kids were having asthma attacks and all kinds of other stuff behind it. So all the stuff that the United States has done externally, they've done internally, and they continue to do internally. And so, yeah, you could point to, Americans in the armed services, but the armed services has always had a weird relationship in terms of what is presented as to marginalized people and poor people. A lot of times, the way that they described it when I was growing up was, if you were a kid that they thought might be on jail bound, they would kind of push you into military service. If you're a black kid that they thought might be on the way to jail, they kind of steer you towards military service, and that was supposed to be an acceptable trade-off. For poor white kids and poor black kids and poor Latino kids and poor indigenous kids, the military was framed as a ladder out of this economic peril that they found themselves trapped in a way to uplift their families. And so they jumped at it. And a lot of them used that to get out. But what happened is you end up becoming the front for what, you end up becoming the front line to deliver American imperialism across the globe as a trade-off. So essentially, when you're talking about Black, brown, indigenous people in the military, it's presented as this economic ladder to escape. And they don't necessarily tell you about what you end up getting stuck with. I've had elders in my family still stuck with the nightmares. Like, they presented this military service as a means to escape poverty and climb the socioeconomic ladder, but they're stuck with the nightmares with no support. No support provided. And so that's kind of the way that military service is sold to Americans. And so we talk about imperialism. They're looking at the military as the enforcers of imperialism, but a lot of them were kind of maneuvered into the military. And we had this big long gap where we hadn't really been in any wars. And so a lot of people joined the military, not thinking that we'd be in a war. And next thing you know, we've been in war since ongoing since the Persian Gulf, since the first time. And a lot of people who joined, we were coming out of a period where America hadn't really had any major armed conflicts. So the chance of them going to war wasn't really that big of a deal. They could be in the military the entire time and never see any armed conflict and get out and get their GI Bill and go about their day. Well, the dynamics of that changed. And so basically you are taking and it's disproportionately poor and marginalized people, and dropping them in and saying, okay, these are your frontline soldiers for American imperialism. And so that was the argument I was having. I feel like I'm circling on this one. Okay. So how fucked are we? Let's talk about what's happening this week. As you can see, all the stuff going around, and I'm not going to say the young lady's name because that's going to attract the trolls. I don't want that in my feed. But young lady was murdered by ICE. And I'm not going to go into that as much. I'm going to talk about what my working theory of what's happening with ICE is right now. Okay. I want to be clear on this. This is a working theory. It's not a finished argument. Okay. And the goal is to kind of walk through patterns and ask whether we're all seeing how this fits inside the idea of neutral law enforcement. Because my take on this is this ICE deployment, and this is not some amazing from the mountaintop kind of epiphany that I'm reaching. But it is just something I'm putting together, y'all. When I see these the ICE deployment, the way that all this rolled out, it had nothing to do with immigration enforcement. If you look at a lot of the cities that ICE was deployed to, these are cities with populations that did not vote for the guy in office. And so, and even if it's in states where they ended up coming out for him, he'll find cities that didn't. And so essentially, this is establishing a federal law enforcement presence in cities that did not vote for him. It's an intimidation thing. And that's what we're seeing. ICE's budget is larger than pretty much any other arm of the military right now. They've removed a lot of the restrictions regarding white nationalists and people with white nationalist tattoos. I got into it with a guy earlier talking about, well, it's freedom of choice and people can be white nationalists in ICE or white nationalists in federal law enforcement if they want to. It's never been about a freedom thing. It's a logistical thing. If you have connections to gangs and any kind of organized crime, you can be compromised really, really easily. The way the Fed see it. And so they make sure that they at least try to give they try to pretend like they're filtering out white nationalist gangs and things along those lines, because if you have any level of involvement, it's easy to compromise you domestically or internationally. And so that's why historically they've always filtered out like people that have obvious ties to white nationalism. But that's always been kind of this tipping point, because if you have like if you're trying to go for any kind of like federal law enforcement thing, you have connections with any kind of regular American street gang, you know, ethnic street gang, Bloods and Crips, you're getting filtered out of that process. But the line isn't always clear when it comes to white nationalists. Well, they showed memos. ICE essentially has rolled back those things that say if you are an obvious white nationalist, you obviously have the tattoos all up and down your arm. It used to be that you would just get filtered out of that role, you know, during the background check. They waived all that. And so we're seeing a lot less activity across the board from like Proud Boys and all that other stuff out there, who are the gangs, the ones that we know, the militias that we know. My theory is a lot of them probably have joined some kind of they've taken the free money, taken the easy money, and joined some kind of border enforcement crew. And that's what we're seeing. And so but he deployed essentially the administration has deployed an armed force to cities and locations and places that did not vote for him to establish a federal presence. And their job is to fuck with everybody that they can fuck with. I don't know where this is going. You know, it's not to sound alarmist or anything, but when you have a huge hiring splurge, huge hiring, not splurge, huge hiring surge. And in that hiring surge, you waive the requirements to at least show that you aren't majorly tied to separatist militias. You just waive that, say, you know what, bring those separatist militia guys in here, man. They're good people. You're setting up a situation where you're trying to get people that are loyal to you on the law enforcement front to act as your agents in places where you are not their first ballot choice. And to me, it almost feels like we're trying to mass all these federal agencies and all these blue cities coming up on midterms. And there's no way that they're not going to fuck with people around election time when the midterms are around. There's no way that they're not going to use Border Patrol and ICE and their enhanced powers within 100 miles of the border to fuck with people. There's no way it's going to happen. And so this has nothing, they're using immigration as kind of the front end, but this is about getting a federal force involved. And to be honest with you, it just dropped that Trump was lamenting that he didn't use the National Guard to seize the election machines in 2020. I got to find the source for that, but I read that this morning. And so it's insidious. And if you are, and you know, this is kind of a challenge to the alleged, you know, libertarians and things like that out there. If you are really about that action, you should be against this. There should be a degree of solidarity between you and leftists regarding that side of things, where you don't like overt displays of military force and you don't want government involvement in things. You should be absolutely pounding the table like this is ridiculous and this is not okay. And to me, that's kind of the litmus test on how about it you really are. If you are really about don't tread on me, out of my cold dead head and stuff, I need to see you get active about the fact that we have federal troops deployed to major U.S. cities for no good reason. And again, it's supposed to be immigration enforcement actions, but there's I can tell you where there's a lot of immigrants. I live in Nebraska. There's a gang of immigrants in some of these communities out here. They ain't sending ICE to these communities. There are communities out here where immigrants almost were, for a time, immigrants were such a significant portion of, like Lexington, that Lexington plant. Immigrants were such a significant portion of that community that when they shut down the plant, that community died. They ain't sending ICE out there. There are red states all over the country where immigrant labor is really, really active and a huge population. They ain't sending ICE to those places. They're sending ICE to communities that didn't vote for Trump. That's what's happening. And so I'll let you connect the dots. Why would they want to surge military? Why would they want to surge federal police in there into these communities that did not vote for the guy? Why would you want that presence on the ground unless it's to fuck with somebody? So back to my outline. Okay. It's not me saying ICE is some secret off the books organization. We see what they do in plain view. This is hyper visible. This is intimidation. This is showing the communities that didn't turn out and vote for the guy in charge that you're not going to get away with this. This is retribution. And this is what we're seeing is retribution. So I'm questioning whether visible aggressive deployments are being used strategically. Yeah, they are. They're being used strategically. Right now we're seeing them mass. I don't see them pulling back anytime before midterms. I don't see it happening. I can be proven wrong. I don't think it's going to happen. And I think we're going to see ICE and Customs and National Guard absolutely fuck with people who are voting. They're trying to make it so that they're trying to chill the environment so that people aren't active and aren't engaging. Okay. And so they're sending a message. And that's the message is you didn't vote for me. Now you get stuck with my secret police force. Okay. ICE operations are larger, more visible, and more concentrated in major cities because major cities are typically going to go blue. Even Omaha, Nebraska, where Omaha, Nebraska is a blue city in a red state. Population centers are typically end up going blue. And so if you want to gain control of who's voting where, the best place, the highest impact place to do it is going to be in blue cities. Okay. And I need to really stress something to you. These ICE agents aren't necessarily discriminating. They're not using any kind of discernment between who is an immigrant and who is just darker than a brown paper bag. They're jamming people up based on skin color. And if you have a certain look to you, or if you don't. And so this is an intimidation tactic. And to me, I think it's kind of a provocation because they're escalating things. It's kind of like the old Pinkertons back in the days, right? The Pinkerton agency used to go out and step on labor protests, right? And what the Pinkerton agency would do is they would seed a couple of their agents in the crowd of protesters and have those seated agents escalate the protest to try to escalate the violence in there to give them reason, give them jurisdiction to come and violently put down the protests. They were there to antagonize the crowd and then use that antagonization to step on the protest and end it. And I think that's what we're seeing. Okay. Geography matters. We're seeing the heaviest presence in overly whelming, urban, diverse, politically blue, and within 100 miles of a border. That is very important because ICE enjoys enhanced powers within 100 miles of a border. Okay. But my folks on the ground in Minneapolis are talking about ICE is running up in people's houses. Like going door to door, running up in people's houses, no warrants, no nothing. They're just doing door-to-door searches for people. It's not even based on any intel that they got. They're just running up in people's houses and businesses, bro. I don't understand how you can be okay with this. And the only way you could be okay with it is if it's not happening to you. Okay. These are also cities that have local governments that are resistant to the current administration or regime, because we can start calling it a regime. Okay. This is to break their backs. This is to break their spirits. This is to get their people scared to go outside. And they're all setting this stage for this thing to go sideways at midterms. And I wouldn't be surprised if we continue this on through the entire presidency. We're going to have ICE deployed in major cities fucking with people. Like I said, my people in Minneapolis, they're running up in people's houses, bro. Like no warrants, no intel on whether somebody they're looking for is there. They're just going door to door and going into your shit. I don't understand how that. I don't. And I know that people are going to fall politically all over the spectrum about that. I don't know how that's okay in your world. So if you say you're about freedom and liberty and all that shit, you're full of shit if you are cool with that. Because if you wouldn't be cool with it in your suburbs, you shouldn't be cool with it just because somebody lives in a different city than you. Okay. So the overlap creates tension. I think they're trying to escalate. Okay. And a lot of it has to do is based on voting patterns and alignment. So when enforcement pressure lands mostly in places that oppose you politically, the effect is no longer neutral. This is a politically motivated presence. And like I said, you're just going to leave them in there long enough to screw with the election results. Okay. Minneapolis is seen as the flashpoint because they got active last time. Okay. The incident with the federal agent changed the conversation because people are pissed. And this is the inciting incident. As we used to call it, the antecedent. This is the thing that's going to start the chain. And so now all you need is, just like last time in Minneapolis, where they caught old boy who was from out of town, who had the police tattoos, running around breaking windows and stuff while people are protesting. And the protesters confronted him and said, "What are you doing?" And he drew a knife on them, I think, if I remember correctly. "Why are you out here damaging stuff? That's not what we're about." And he tried to assault them. We're going to see an escalation. And right now, Minneapolis is kind of teetering on the edge. But right now, they're having clashes in Portland too. Like they're having clashes all over the country regarding ICE's presence here. Okay. I'm kind of skimming through my notes. So this ground presence thing is what it is. I don't anticipate this is going to go away before. I don't think ICE's job is going to be finished, or even where they have a reduction in force. We're not going to see that for a long, long time because they've already done a surge and tensions are already high. Okay. This is about punishing. Again, this is about punishing people who voted wrong. And I can tell you, we experience that even if you're a blue city in a red state, you experience this all the time for your legislature, where your legislature is constantly finding ways to fuck y'all over and screw with you because you didn't vote for the people that they wanted you to vote for. Omaha's been in this for a long time since we split our electoral votes based on our unicameral. What happens is every time Omaha doesn't go with the rest of the state for who they want in office, there's always going to be some local legislator that's trying to punish Omaha for not voting right. It's really a weird and insidious thing. And it's a power game. You can't allow people to vote for who you want to. So you have to absolutely control all the seats of power. And I think that ends up becoming a drug in and of itself. And so this is just a way to control the board, control the chessboard, control the cities that he can't otherwise control, and get those rebellious cities that didn't vote for him under his thumb by massing law enforcement presence in their neighborhoods. All right, let's see what the comments say. Are you live with steak? Okay. Anyway, I'm gonna keep chugging along here. I'm gonna move off of the political stuff, man, because this is not anything I want to deliberate on. I spend all day consuming this shit, and I'm gonna be damned if my live stream is going to be just miserable political shit the entire time. I need to talk about some things that I actually enjoy. And so we're going to put a pin in this. So if we're talking about how fucked are we in terms of what we're dealing with secret police crashing into people's homes in Minneapolis, I'm telling you that's happening. Yeah, I'm telling you that people have been telling me like this is what's happening. How fucked are we? What's the invasion movie? Give me a good alien invasion movie. Maybe Independence Day. Maybe Independence Day. Not the sequels. Not the sequel. The sequel was ass. But I think we're kind of Independence Day level kind of fucked. Um, maybe Red Dawn. Maybe Red Dawn is what that is. Even though it was a propaganda, even though that was a piece of U.S. propaganda, the theme still applies. Occupying force, occupying the United States in a massive way. Like I said, man, if you are Mr. Liberty and out of my cold dead hands and all that other stuff, you shouldn't be cool with what's happening right now in terms of using federal law enforcement to try to intimidate population centers that did not vote for you. That's crazy work. So we're going to talk about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure because I need to get off of this. This has kind of been consuming my day. So my story with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a bizarre one, pun intended. I discovered JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I've been hearing about it. I've seen the DO memes and everything, the to be continued memes with Roundabout by Yes. Yes is one of my favorite bands, even before JoJo. Yes and Toto were two of my favorite bands. And so I discovered it because of hearing Roundabout and like, okay, I need to find out more. And around that time, they started playing it on Toonami, and it was the Phantom Blood, which is season 1, but I think they made it after they made season 3, after they made Stardust Crusaders, if I'm not mistaken. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong on this one. But my journey with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, I did not like it when I first started. Like the first couple of episodes of Phantom Blood, I did not like it. The way that they did Danny, my boy Danny, that was filthy, bro. Like that was so filthy. And I didn't like it. The show was aggressive and mean-spirited to me, and I wasn't really into JoJo when it first started. But as with a lot of things, like I'm doing with One Piece, I kind of stuck it out. One Piece ain't really redeemed itself yet. I ain't caught up to where One Piece is good yet on Toonami. I ain't caught up there yet. And so every episode of One Piece is kind of this weird endurance match because I know it's going to get good. I know it's going to get good at some point. But right now, it's not. And so I thought I was kind of on that same trajectory with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but Phantom Blood picked up, and I'm like, okay, I'm invested. The entire deal's trying to kill Jonathan's dad. That's the story that hooked me because I'm like, okay, this is kind of turning into this weird whodunit where we know who done it. All right, I can fuck with this. And so the entire mask thing, that's where it took like, okay, so now now I'm interested. I'm invested because now we added another wrinkle to the story. Now we got a vampire in the story. And how is he going to overcome this vampire? And, with Dio as the vampire. And so the first season almost lost me. It came really close to losing me and then instantly reeled me in, like within a couple weeks. And so that was kind of my journey, my first exposure to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And after the first season, it really kind of picked up for me because then we go into season 2. I think we had Jonathan, now we're with Joseph Joestar. And that one hooked me from Jump Street. I to be honest with you, personality wise, Joseph's probably my favorite Joestar. I just the smart ass, the smart ass troll who just screws with people is really kind of up my alley. And so I really enjoyed Jonathan Joestar. And so when season 2 came around, I was 100% in. Now, my wife kind of came in because of the music. Like the ending music hooked her, Roundabout hooked her. And then in season 3, they introduced Walk Like an Egyptian. And that was like, okay, she's a JoJo fan because they played Walk Like an Egyptian at the end of the show. Sometimes it doesn't take a whole lot. But like I said, I've been following it on Toonami. And so I watched season 1, season 2, season 3, 4, and 5. I watched Pretty much I watched Phantom Blood. Um, I forgot what the second one was. What was season 2 of JoJo, y'all? The one with Joseph Joestar. So Phantom Blood, blah blah blah. Stars Dust Crusaders, um, A Diamond is Unbreakable, and Golden Wind. I watched all of those on Toonami. I ended up becoming obsessed with the show. I tried to read the book. I tried to read the manga, and my mind does not comprehend Araki's art in his panels. It just doesn't. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to look at. My mind does not process Araki's paneling. I just can't do it. And so I'm kind of in this weird mode where I'm stuck just waiting for the new shows to drop. Like before I could get in Still Ball Run, I can watch videos where they're recapping it. I can even watch summaries of where they're explaining what happens in the books. But if I'm going to actually consume it, I have to see the show because my mind will not process Araki's art. Like there's some kind of disconnect visually where I cannot tell what's happening in the panels. Other people can. I can't really divine what's happening. Okay. I think I'm driven by the weirdness. I think I'm driven by the chaotic nature of the show, especially once they moved on from was it Hamon or whatever. When they first started with that and moved to stands, stands were super interesting to me because especially in Stardust Crusaders, the way they use stands, they didn't power scale the stands. They didn't keep buffing the stands. Like whenever they had to fight a new enemy stand, it wasn't that the new enemy stand was more powerful. It activated in elaborate ways that seemed to be more inescapable. Does that make sense? Like the enemy stands kept getting seemingly more and more overwhelming. And it was almost like watching them try to figure out a saw trap without losing any fingers. And I think that's what got me really invested in Stardust Crusaders and the entire franchise once they pivoted to stands. Because I love the stand battles because they have to actually figure shit out and think on the fly. And I like that. That's dope. I don't like the stand battles where it's this weird Deus Ex Machina thing that happens and they magically just solve the problem. I like where they have to actually figure out how to use their stand ability to overcome the thing that they are facing. And so that was really super interesting to me. And I almost feel like Joseph was, even though in what is the name of the second? What is the name of the second season of JoJo? What is the name of it? Okay, maybe Stardust Crusaders is the third season? Part 3. Oh, God, I fell into the trap, didn't I? Oh, so Stardust Crusaders is episode. I'm looking like an idiot. Stardust Crusaders is the second season. I don't know why I always separate part 1 from part 2. And consider part 2 the second season. But I liked how Joseph moved when he was fighting the Pillar Men. I thought that was incredibly interesting. And I almost feel like that is a progenitor to the stand battles because he had to outsmart all of these villains. And he was overmatched in almost every single battle that he was in. And then we get to the stand battles where we get into Stardust Crusaders, and the stand battles are a chess match. You're watching them actually play chess with the villains and have to outflank them. And like I said, it's not like this overwhelming thing. Like on Dragon Ball, when you introduce a new villain, he's got to be this overwhelming, omnipresent, super deluxe threat now to stop to really fuck with Goku or Vegeta. Like in order to really mess with Goku or Vegeta, the villains have to be buffed to this unbelievable level. In JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, all you need is a stand that has a power that's very difficult to figure out how it applies. And now you got a really interesting enemy stand. And so there's been a couple of times where I was even watching Stardust Crusaders. I'm like, holy shit, how are they going to get out of this one? And somehow they get out of it. And so that's what I enjoy about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Like I said, after, because we're in the Steel Ball Run universe now, especially on the animated front. I can't wait for Steel Ball Run to drop on Netflix. I'm really excited about it. I'll be honest with you. I ended up spoiling since I couldn't wait for Stone Ocean to drop. I went ahead and spoiled Stone Ocean for myself. I'm actually going to go back and rewatch Stone Ocean so that I can get ready for the Steel Ball Run universe. I'm really interested to see what they do with that one. I've been following JoJolian. I've been following JoJo Lands. I don't know if I'm a big as a fan of things post Steel Ball Run, if that makes sense, because it feels like the stands are getting a little too abstract. And so it ends up not becoming a chess match. It's just whatever ass pull Araki can come up with is what gets them out of the battle. And that's how I feel about like JoJo Lands and JoJolian so far. It's whatever Araki can just magically come up with. And it's less of a battle of wits, and it's just more, how can they get out of this? And Araki just magically pulls up something, some weird thing just happens. And I think it kind of jumped the shark specifically in JoJolian with the entire calamity, because I still don't understand how Wonder Review works. And I get it, but I don't though. And I still don't know how Josuke of that universe, his powers don't make a lot of sense, even though they're saying it's the spin and the bubbles and all this other stuff. It doesn't necessarily seem like, to me, it doesn't seem like he had that overwhelming power to take down Wonder of You. And it feels like Araki's just like, I need to end this. I need to find a way to end this and move on to the next part. So hopefully JoJo Lands, they can kind of figure it out. I know they've had some stand battles in JoJo Lands. Like I said, I'm not as big of a fan after, I think Steel Ball Run was kind of where I'm like, okay, this makes sense. They're actually having to outsmart each other, actually having to outsmart the enemy stand users. But I don't know, man. And like I said, I have a hard time. For me, it's harder to read the books because my eyes and my brain cannot compute what is on the panels when Araki draws them. I just can't. My mind does not compute with it. And so I just have to wait to the animated to see it actually in motion, to see what's happening in these battles. More times than not, I'm just outside of that, I'm depending on recaps to kind of tell me what happened in the stories. Sorry, y'all. I can't read everything. I can't read every single book. Sometimes I have to go on to YouTube and watch recap videos so that I can understand what's going on. Okay. So the Haman to stands thing, I can never say it. Haman. Yeah. When they shifted the stands, whatever they're using before, and they shifted the stands, I like the fact that it's not power scaling initially. The fights work because they're puzzles. It's like them trying to solve a puzzle, and it's not just brute force. Even though a lot of the fights end with a brute force, specifically in Stardust Crusaders, the battles typically end with Jotaro pummeling somebody to death. But up until that point, he's got to figure things out, which I like. Is how do we survive this? Cleverness matters. I think maybe the battle with Dio is probably that first time where it's like, okay, Araki, he just wants to get out of this. He just wants to get out of it. And so Star Platinum was just like, all right, so we're just gonna break the laws of the universe right now, and I'm going to be the world right now, and I'm gonna match his energy. So, but I just like the cleverness matters more than just pure brute overwhelming brute strength. I think Golden Wind was probably the best retelling of that, because when you watch Golden Wind, was it Vento Areno or whatever? When you watch Golden Wind, the way that they ended up beating those enemy stands is always them outsmarting the enemy stands up until the very last battle. Whereas Giorno versus Old Boy with King Crimson, and then it becomes kind of an ass pull. But up until that point, it was truly outsmarting the enemy stands. Okay. And so once the rules are revealed of the battle, the tension spikes because you're trying to figure out how the hell are they going to get out of this one. And you're seeing problem solving under pressure. And that's what I like. I like the anime because I could see it play out in front of my eyes. When it comes to the manga, it's hard for my brain to process Araki's panel layouts. I just can't do it, especially having to read them right to left on top of trying to process what visually I'm looking at. Y'all can clown me if y'all want to. It's hard for me to track. My brain just doesn't agree with it. And I can't be the only one out there. Anime feels like the correct medium for me. And so I'm saying all that to say this. I'm super, super hyped about Steel Ball Run. I want to see what it is. I'm interested to see I'm even interested to see what song they pick for the closing credits, because the internet's going to go crazy when they drop it. I know the internet's going to go crazy when they pick the closing song for at least the first arc. Okay. So that's my journey with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I started out really disliking it, and they had me hooked. And they had me hooked within a few episodes of the original one, the Phantom Blood, and I've been a fan ever since. I wish I could get into the manga. I wish I could really, follow the manga and be as hyped as everybody else is. I just don't know. I cannot I can't see. I even tried getting the latest issue of JoJolion a couple months ago and actually sitting down and reading it, and my brain does not fuck with it at all. It doesn't. It just can't process what's happening in those panels. I never had that problem before, and so it's kind of a unique problem. It's kind of a unique frustration. Okay. And so once you accept the fact that JoJo revolves around just this weird theme of chaos, and you just got to embrace, you don't know what the hell's going to happen in these interactions when these characters interact with another. You have no concept. Like, you cannot predict anything that happens in these battles, and that's what I enjoy about it. The Dragon Ball arc, the Dragon Ball comparison is Goku's going to fight the guy. He might end up getting overpowered. Vegeta's going to get his ass whooped. And then Goku's going to get more powerful than dude and defeat him in the end. And that's kind of what it turned into. Even the moral arc was weak sauce, bro. The way that ended was absolutely trash. And it just, Goku got new powers and he turned into Kaiju Goku. Just randomly. Here's Kaiju Goku. He's very, very large. Why is he a kaiju? I have no idea. But now we have Kaiju Goku. I don't like stuff like that. JoJo, it may go weird, and there may be some Deus Ex Machina stuff that happens, but it's not to the point where it pulls you out of the immersion of the story, at least up until this point. Like I said, I've had a harder time getting into stuff after Steel Ball Run. JoJolion was long, and to me, it was kind of an uninteresting story. I know it's supposed to happen in Morio and stuff. It didn't. There was gaps where there was months and months and months where nothing happened whatsoever, and then towards the end, everything started happening at once. Okay. Like I said, I want to see what they do with JoJo Lands. JoJo Lands has been interesting. It hasn't been engaging as much, but I want to see what happens. So anyway, that's my story with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I do appreciate y'all tuning in. Next week, tune in. I'm going to have my character issues up for Vandal Savage, and we're going to go in, take a deep dive into that character. And if we're still here, if the planet hasn't completely collapsed into utter chaos, hopefully I'll see you guys next week. I appreciate you guys. Stay tuned for Blerding While Dad. You're going to see a lot more of me on different platforms. I'll check you out later. Peace.